Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So Ukraine went on successful counterattack not far away from Velika Novosilka. It's the new hotspot and Russia gained lots of the ground recently there. They even went to Novi Kamar. It was the very fast brace from the Russian side, but this morning Ukraine managed to regain positions and the Russians just left this area, retreated. So Ukraine still keeps the control over this very light and thin supply line. If we go to the deep state military map, they don't have the recent update about this situation, but there is no more Russian presence in Novi Kamar. But the main Ukrainian supply line goes from this side, from the west. Well, after all, my friends, I don't think that it will dramatically change the situation for Ukrainian army in Velika Novosilka. Russia is still capable to get Velika Novosilka under their control because they use massive resources for that. So maybe with a new mid-wave attack, they will regain control over Novi Kamar. Sometimes we see the successful counterattacks performed by Ukrainian side. However, those are kind of small compared to the Russian army advancement. Because at the same direction, not far away from Velika Novosilka on the south, Russia got control over some of the fields, and they put their flag in one of the small villages. Kind of the interesting thing happened this morning. The capital city of Grozny was under attack by Ukrainian drones, and particularly the building, the barracks of the Special Purpose Regiment Ahmat, the Chechen forces. As we see here in the photo, there was the massive devastation of one of the barracks. Who was inside of that barrack by the time? Could be Ahmat soldiers. The photos were presented by the eyewitnesses, and definitely this is the Grozny city. The head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, became absolutely mad about the case. And this picture is taken from the other side, however doesn't show the full building. I mean, more to the right here, the building was severely devastated. So what did Ramzan Kadyrov do? He took BTR and some other vehicles and he went to meet Ukrainian prisoners of war. Yes, on armored vehicle. As you can see, there is also the trophied Humvee on the back, and probably also the trophied Bradley from what I can see. As always, Kadyrov likes to film some of the TikToks. Before he filmed the Cybertruck and now some of the armored vehicles. So he went there to meet Ukrainian prisoners and he told one of them, if I give you a gun, would you kaput yourself? Our guide said no, but Kadyrov said you went to the war, so you should expect to finish yourself. But our guy again said, no, I want to leave, it's normal. So actually Kadyrov looked like a clown. After it, he proposed to put Ukrainian prisoners of war on top of the roofs of the buildings, which are very crucial for Chechen leader, like for example the headquarters of the Ahmat battalion, which was hit today, as you saw. After meeting with some of the Ukrainian prisoners, Kadyrov went to the big prison where more of the Ukrainian POVs are located. And they showed many of the Ukrainian prisoners of war, actually. Yes, you probably understand my attitude towards Kadyrov, but after all, from what I saw, if those are really Ukrainian prisoners of war, and I have almost no doubts about it because I saw the faces, well, they're not thin, they look healthy, and it is good. From what I heard, Chechens behave much better with the Ukrainian prisoners of war than Russians in many of the prisons on the Russian territory. I'll not put the sound here because you'll probably not understand, but I may tell you what this guy was speaking about. He called Ukrainian authorities to exchange them as fast as possible. They said that the table for exchange was created with a name, so we're waiting here, he says, for a very long time, please exchange us. Also, judging on the interviews from Ukrainian prisoners of war who were exchanged and who were in Chechen prisons, if they required some of the medical treatment surgeries, it was done properly there in Chechnya. In the other Russia, usually no. So yes, I hate Kadyrov, but after all, I may admit that the Chechen behavior towards Ukrainians is much better. It's kind of strange actually because we are very different. Well, maybe there are just less sick maniacs in their army, or maybe Ahmat battalion is fighting behind the front lines. They have less losses compared to the Russian army, so less anger towards the Ukrainians. I don't know.
Каждый дрон, да, чтобы они сбивали, дайте им хорошее оружие, чтобы они там защищали нашу республику.
Alright, an interesting idea from Kadyrov. He called to give those guys, Ukrainian prisoners of war, weapons. Yes, for them, as I said to you before, to stay on top of the roofs of the buildings and to shut down Ukrainian drones. Kind of interesting idea from this crazy dictator Kadyrov to give weapons to prisoners of war. It is something really new. Yeah, obviously no one would do it, it's just the PR video. And the main TikTok warrior left the scene on Bradley. Yes, unfortunately Ukraine lost some of the Bradleys in kind of the good condition, but Russians cannot repair those. They don't have the spare parts, they don't have the special munition for the gun. That's why they basically gave the Bradley to Kadyrov. They know that this baby boy likes those kind of vehicles, and he will film many more TikToks with that. And later on, Kadyrov gave a short press conference explaining that Elon Musk didn't give him the Cybertruck. It wasn't a gift, it was someone's Cybertruck, which Kadyrov used for his PR campaign, and later on Tesla switched off that Cybertruck after they saw Kadyrov with it. Yeah, Kadyrov was once fighting against the Russian army in 90s, and also, by the way, Ukrainian volunteers helped Chechens in their fight for independence. But Kadyrov betrayed his people and now he's working fully for Russia. But you know that there could be the possibility that Kadyrov may disobey Putin's orders. The Northern Caucasus could be the first spark in this huge fire. If Putin will openly show his weakness, Kadyrov will try to get the power at least in this region. I mean, Chechnya, Dagestan, Ingushetia may be part of the Krasnodarsky Krai. Kadyrov and his Ahmat battalion has been hated by the Russian Z community since the beginning of the war. They are just too different with the Russian patriots. Like 2 months ago, there was the big conflict between Kadyrov and some of the Dagestani, also some Kremlin elite, and now it starts to get calm, but behind the curtains there could be the escalation. We don't know lots of the stuff, but Kadyrov is outcast among the Russian elite. He will never be their guy after all, and he behaves accordingly. Basically like a small offended boy, but this boy actually may hit hard at some point. And you know what happened today after a Ukrainian drone attack in Grozny? Well, Adam Kadyrov, the son of Ramzan Kadyrov, obtained medal once again. Medal. I mean, do they do it for a purpose? Like, it is circus. All of the Russia is laughing about it. If you open their Telegram channels with translator, it's just hilarious. But you know, guys, this medal that was given to Adam today is kind of special. The medal carries the name of Baisagur Banayevsky, who was the commander of the Caucasus resistance in a war against Russia back in 19th century. So yes, there was the Caucasus War between Russia and Caucasus for a very long time, and Banayevsky was fighting against Russia. So in a way, Adam was honored with the Russian Resistance Medal. Interesting. And just look at this a little later. There is the meaning in Russian. I tried to translate it in English. He has more medals than a whore has crabs. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do on the YouTube, you might also join me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page I'll put in the video description just below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. And let's move to Syria, because there the situation for the Assad army and the Russian forces in the city of Hama is getting worse hour by hour. Yes, Assad sent some of the reinforcements to protect the local military airfield and the city itself, and they are very close to basically encircle Hama. I guess that tomorrow they will enter this airfield, and also they will try to cut those supply roads from both of the sides. So the Assad army will have no other way than to retreat from Hama to the other next big city, Homs, and that's the only city on the way to Damascus. Kind of the stormy weather for the Assad regime. Actually, guys, I'm very surprised that rebels are so effective. Also, this picture shows us that rebels continue their movement towards the mountains, and behind those mountains in this direction, around 33 kilometers, there's the big Russian military airbase Khmeimim. While rebels may take the small road all across the mountains, it's kind of narrow, so it's easy to block. As the other variant, they might advance using this road on the south. We'll see. For the last 24 hours, they've took some of the villages under control. I guess they will reach the edge of this valley very soon. Also today there was the rocket strike report on the Russian Navy base. Well, Russia removed their ships from the base, and they today also launched their cruise missiles Calibers to target the rebel forces in the province of Idlib. Was that strike successful? I'm out of clue, but also Russia launched their aviation. You can see we have some of the spots here, mostly Sukhoi 34 fighter bombers and Sukhoi 25 attack airplanes. And those are the tanks of the Bashar Assad army, just left on the road in a perfect perfect condition, ready to fight. Crew scared and left the vehicles. It reminds me the story that my grandpa told me. He was the military serviceman in the Soviet army. He flew the radio spy airplane and took part in many of the conflicts. So he told me the story that the Egyptian army was armed with Soviet tanks and went to attack Israel. But then Israel launched their airplanes and struck the tanks. Well, most of the crew abandoned their machines and just ran away. Well, after all, majority of those tanks were captured by Israeli army, and later on they went almost to Cairo. And just with the help of the big diplomatic pressure on Israel, they were stopped. So here we have the same picture. Perfectly airworthy tanks were just abandoned because the tank crews were in lack of the motivation to fight. It means one thing, that even if Bashar Assad has the huge army, with no motivation they will not fight. And one more Syrian army base was captured with some of the vehicles, again tanks and equipment, rocket artillery system, and this is the Tiger vehicle over here, some of the other armored vehicle. Yes, rebels for sure got massive lend-lease from Russia and from Bashar Assad army. But the biggest trophy for them so far is this Podlot K1 air defense system radar. It costs like millions of dollars, and it is the part of the equipment of the S-300 and S-400 systems. As you see, it is not damaged, it is in full serviceable condition. However, it wouldn't work without launchers. Maybe there are also some of the launchers, but they are not being yet shown. I mean, the pictures were not leaked into the internet. Can Ukraine buy this system from the rebel army, because it's just useless for them without launchers if they don't have those? And they may supply this radar for Ukraine, because Ukraine actually has S-300 systems, but the radars are quite outdated. But this is the best radar Russia has for the air defense. But you know what may stop the offensive of the Turkish-backed rebels? Well, the new offensive of the Kurdish forces in one of the districts of Syria. It's been reported that they went on attack through this road towards Tal Arn. Yep, Syria is the crazy place with lots of the spheres of influence, with lots of the forces, fights, and it will not be a calm place for decades ahead. To the other news, again, there is the tremendous pressure from the current White House administration and some of the officials like Anthony Blinken to lower the conscription age for Ukraine down to 18 years old. Blinken said that Ukraine must approve a difficult decision regarding mobilization. According to him, it is critically important, even with money and ammunition. There must be people at the front. Yes, there must be people on the front, and actually Ukraine has still some of the reserves. We are speaking about 10 capable brigades, but they have weaponry just for 2.5 brigades. So with what weaponry Ukraine may potentially send those youngsters to fight? And here I'm gonna read one of the comments from Ukrainian Telegram group because I like it. The United States must make a difficult decision about whether to continue to block Ukraine's accession to NATO and whether to lift the remaining restrictions on a long-range strikes against Russia, because now Ukraine allowed just to strike the Kursk Oblast. And finally, whether to provide sufficient military assistance. It should be a common job done by our allies and Ukraine. So Ukraine obviously has people to fight, but Ukraine needs something to fight against Russia. If you just send people with Kalashnikov against the Russian midwaves or Russian tanks, that would just be gone, with no real result achieved. It is kind of frustrating because on the other hand, North Korea alone supplies Russia with almost everything they need, including army men. Yes, for now we haven't seen the North Korean soldiers fighting, but they will very soon. Well, I don't think that Zelensky will lower the conscription age right now because, you know, this administration and all of those officials, including Blinken, are going away. In 1 month and a half there will be a new administration, so Ukraine will have to adjust to the new realities. And something tells me that Donald Trump will not push Ukraine to mobilize youngsters, at least at the very beginning of his presidency. Well, the good thing that Blinken said today that Ukraine may potentially obtain $50 billion United States dollars in the coming weeks. That help was agreed by G7 countries, and the Russian assets will be used and partially confiscated to support the Ukrainian military and economy. And still that is the potential help. They were speaking about it for a very, very long time. So I will believe it when I see the official news that this military support is granted for Ukraine. Well, actually it's not the military support, it's the general support. Military, as I say, to end economy. While still the Russian military budget for the next year is several times more than any sort of the military support of Ukraine. To the other political news, there is the Romanian candidate for the presidency, Georgescu, who actually won the first round of elections, and he is against the military support of Ukraine. He is the far-right populist, and basically we see that more and more European countries are being converted by their society and voters into some sort of the strange states which are in opposition towards the bloc they are in. I mean the European Union and NATO. So if this guy wins the elections in Romania, all of the military support from Romania to Ukraine will be cancelled. Moreover, Romania would not provide its territory for the transfer of the weaponry towards Ukraine. Well, I call it the urbanization of Europe. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do with it. People are just dissatisfied with the current system and they are looking for the possible solution, voting for the populist politicians. Well, we'll see the results of the elections in Romania on 8th of December. There was the briefing of some of the Russian officials, the meeting, the idea of which was to support the families of the fallen Russian soldiers, and Putin's niece, actually responsible for this humanitarian stuff, called that there were some of the DNA samples taken by the Russian families to identify the fallen Russian soldiers. She said about 48,000 samples. It happened for the last 7 months and they're still processing the information data. And also they're looking for the bodies because those soldiers are just missing. 48,000 soldiers missing for the last 7 months. Missing. It means not KA and not wounded. 48,000. Yes, you probably understand what might happen to those Russian soldiers. In the best case, they were imprisoned by Ukraine. But usually caputed on the front lines. Well, later on she was interrupted by the speaker of the meeting and they say that this information is quite classified, so don't tell it any longer. Putin basically made the numbers of the Russian losses top secret. Well, Ukrainian side actually also did. Well, the estimated losses for the Russian army in this war could reach up to 700,000 people. I mean soldiers. Well, maybe this figure is even larger. But you know guys, I'm actually not happy about the stuff because it is basically a bloodbath created by dictator Putin. So why wouldn't he just withdraw his forces from Ukraine to avoid those losses? Because those are not just the Russian losses. Ukraine also loses lots of the soldiers. Usually the defending side loses 3 times less soldiers compared to the attacking side. Well, it means that Ukraine might have lost around 250,000 soldiers, which is quite a large number if we speak about the general Ukrainian population. Yeah, you may say that there are still millions of Ukrainians, but they're elderly people, women, kids, all together. So the part of the society which might be taken to fight is not that large in Ukraine. And yes, you may send them to fight, but those are also the prospect for Ukrainians' future. If you send all of the men to fight, Ukraine will also fail as the state. For Russia, it's obviously less sensitive because they have 4 times more people, the population, so they may mobilize more and more soldiers if they need. So 48,000 missing or 48,000 KA, they don't really care. I mean, Putin's regime doesn't care about the losses. Right, we have just received the new military map update from the deep state. Definitely the information is confirmed about the Ukrainian counterattack in Novy Kamar. It was successful, so yesterday and today. But at the same time, if we move to the south, the enemy gained control here over Blagodatne village, so yesterday, today, as it was confirmed. And the enemy continued to advance all across the front lines in Kurakhove and towards Pokrovsk, so yesterday, today it was the jump of the Russian army from Zhovte towards Novopushtinka, and this is the small village which they took actually for 1 day. And as you can see here, they turned to the east, so here towards Shevchenka, and Shevchenka is the only village on the way to Pokrovsk. Obviously if they take this road to go, but here is one more village for them to cover. In Kurakhove direction also there was the advancement of the Russian army, so Ukraine will withdraw its forces from this pocket It is understandable. Till the new year it will happen, and the battle for Pokrovsk will start at the very beginning of 2025. And also there is the movement of the Russian army in the Chasiv Yar. Yesterday and today you can see that they expanded the gray area, so they will occupy Chasiv Yar as well, unfortunately. Strategically speaking, Russia now has several of the ways of how they may advance in 2025. For example, if they take Pokrovsk, they may go to those villages, they may turn to Dnipro region, they may also advance towards this very important area, actually from both of the sides, from Chasiv Yar, from this side, also maybe from Toretsk. Well, I guess that finally they will concentrate on Donetsk Oblast, they will not go to Dnipro. I just think like that because it's more logical, because after all, if they go to Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, there will be the huge Ukrainian group left behind. It is not okay according to any sort of the military standards. So first of all, they need to expand this big bridgehead, trying to occupy as many lands as possible, and only after it advance to Dnipropetrovsk. And also the main goal for the Russian army is to encircle Ukrainian army in all of this area. My personal prospect that the next year for Ukraine will be the same as this one, where Ukraine will lose more ground because Russia still has lots of the funds for the military budget for the next year, and the Russian economy is not yet in a critical state to collapse. No, it will not happen in the nearby year, but on the other hand, Ukraine will be in lack of the military support, probably. And the negotiations are also not possible, simply because Russia wants to take more ground and Ukraine doesn't want to negotiate on the Russian demands. Ukraine doesn't want to give Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk Oblast, all of that to Russian Federation. And I must say that it's quite logical not just to give up your territory to your direct enemy. With no fights, nothing, and with no security guarantees for Ukraine. That's why the fight will continue. Ukraine will defend itself in 2025 in the same way as it did always. And I'm gonna keep you updated on situation in Ukraine. Now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.